hey, I probably should have been in counseling a long time ago, you know? But even in my embrace of counseling and therapy, I would say go into it with an open mind, embrace the vulnerability of it, because you're going to feel vulnerable. And then don't take the first person as the first person. So trusting a therapist with your life story is a privilege. You are the expert of your own life, essentially. And so when you go to therapy, make sure it's an interview of the therapist as well. Because a lot of people think I should go to this person. And I think that comes from the medical side of like, I should go to this doctor. I know he specializes in this, so they're going to do this. It doesn't work that way with therapy. You go there, you feel for the person, and you see that does the dialogue coincide? You know, do you feel comfortable, and do you feel like it's a safe space with that person? Or do you feel like the feedback that you're getting thus far is good?
Welcome to the Americus Podcast, where we pursue what it means to become a next level neighbor, creating a place we enjoy with the people we love. I'm your host, John Schroeder, and today I am joined by Brianna Brown. Brianna is not only someone who does marriage and family counseling as a therapist, but also owns her own business called Lotus Nest Counseling Services. And so, Brianna, thank you so much for joining us. Brianna, sorry.
Thank you for having me. It's such a blessing to be here.
Yeah, I love this. This is going to be so fun. We've already talked a little bit beforehand, and so I wish we would have already recorded half of what we've already talked about. So we're going to have a fun time. Thank you so much for coming. This is actually our first time meeting in person, so you filled out our online form very well, very detailed, very oriented. And so I reached out to you. We talked a little bit even today. And so we're here. We want to talk a little bit about your life and growing up, born in Americus, but living in Montezuma. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll also talk about what you're currently doing now and maybe even looking at the future of Americus and how best we as people and as a community can come alongside this amazing city to continue to see change that we all need. So tell us a little bit about your life growing up in Montezuma. Tell us a little bit about your family dynamics.
So, yes, born here in Americus and reared, as I would say, in Montezuma, Georgia. That is where my family is from. So maternally and paternally, my family is from Montezuma. Okay. I am an only child and grew up pretty much good childhood overall. My parents pretty much, raised me in the church. So we have Brown Chapel Baptist Church in Montezuma. Okay. On Highway 224. And so, childhood, I still am. I'm into the arts. And so I would play piano for church. I would sing, always involved in band or something extracurricular in school. And they instilled good values in me. And so great parents, good family, pretty much your Southern, African-American family. So, yes.
That's beautiful. Yes. I mean, I just think about, growing up and it seems like there's a lot of stability, a lot of consistency, a lot of desire to see you grow and develop in many different ways. I mean, we're talking about music, we don't see a lot of that as much today. A lot of things are just kind of in sports, but just having the arts, being more creative. So that creativity, was that already kind of instilled in you, or did you feel like that had to come out just through family? And
it just came out. I think one Christmas, I don't know if it was my mom or dad, I just was blessed with a keyboard, and one day they came in and I was playing, I have no idea. And they were like, oh my gosh, like you can play the piano by ear. And so started going to piano lessons and just kind of smooths on through probably sophomore year of college is when I paused.
Did you ever see yourself kind of doing that as a career, or did you just do it as a hobby?
It was a hobby. It was an outlet of expression for me. It was something that brought like a calmness as well. So music, dancing, drawing was like, and still is my number one passion.
Okay. Yes. All right. So you still draw today?
No, I think the career has taken over those things. In the future, I would hope to make some time for it.
Did you have certain things that you would like to draw, or did you go and see a picture and go do it, or what was that like?
So funny thing, just probably a week and a half ago, one of my classmates, she randomly sent me a picture that I have drawn of her in class. Now, this is probably 5th grade, 6th grade era. Okay. And I was like, wow. So I would draw people in class if I got bored. I did my work.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
But I would draw people in class and just hand them like, this is a gift. Like to you, for me, and put it in your yearbook, keep it forever. So she was going through some of her old belongings, and she was like, Brianna, look what I found. And I was like, wow, I drew that at that age. Like, I was pretty good.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I mean, having friends even call you and communicate that with you. So how were relationships with you? Were relationships important to you growing up? Did you have a lot? Was that difficult for you?
Of course, like with so being an only child, right? I considered my cousins and those that I grew up with as my siblings. And then in school, high school, I was very friendly. I got voted most friendly in the senior superlatives, very, I guess what you would say, popular, one, Miss Macon County High School. That's where I went to high school at. And so just kind of like, I love people. I would consider myself actually introverted. I think most people look at me, and now that I'm a therapist, it's like, well, she loves to talk. She loves extrovertedness, and I actually always enjoyed just my own company and my solitude. And, having some of the friendships, I think, taught me a lot of lessons head on, like, betrayal, those sorts of things that happen in friendships, because I, just an only child and really didn't have no sibling relationship, I guess, as a foundation to know what that would look like. So just figuring it out along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I know growing up, if I have a lot of some of my guy friends who don't have siblings, and they don't know how to wrestle, because like when you're growing up, as guys, you kind of know, like, all right, I'm gonna give you 20%, then you give me 20%, we start working. And normally if I meet the guys that had no siblings, they go 100%. I'm like, whoa, so relationships obviously are very important to you, they obviously apply to even some of the things that you're doing today. And so when you're thinking about your relationships growing up, and you think about kind of growing into those things when it comes to betrayal, or just how did you know that this was something that was a passion for you to be able to help others?
I really didn't know. So when I first started out, I wanted to become a physician. I wanted to be a doctor, because I like people. I want to heal people. So when I graduated, GSW here, I was pursuing a bachelor's in biology.
Okay.
So I was out catching insects and doing a little entomology, I love the sciences as well. So, shortly after, I kind of got introduced to psychology through Dr. Huffman. He was the chairman of the department, the psychology department at GSW at the time. And so, lovely person. He allowed me to dual major in biology. And then I got introduced to an internship in Montezuma.
Okay.
And so Under her, leadership, people just started coming in and like, oh, you have an intern. And I didn't know what counseling was. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what it was. I knew what guidance counselors were in school, to help you for college and those sort of things. But I didn't know that there was an avenue in which we could go to heal people emotionally and psychologically. I still thought of it as, okay, this is just another science.
Yeah.
So doing my internship of bachelor's, I started working with people just naturally, and they would come see me. I had couples, people in the community there. And I was like, what am I going to do after graduation? Mm-hmm. And so she started, Dr. Teresa Dennis, and she's unfortunately passed away now, but she encouraged me to go and pursue a master's in therapy.
Wow.
I had no idea what it was, did some research, saw that Valdosta State had a program, and preferably online versus campus, so they had a clinic that we actually did therapy through. The professors would watch us behind the mirror doing therapy. It was a very intense program, but it brought out all of the things in me that I wanted to do in terms of what I consider healing people. So that's kind of it. It found me, I would say. Wow. I wasn't looking for it per se.
Yeah, it just kind of grew on you a little bit, right? It grew on me,
yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. And one of the things too is, you went to GSW, so you're from Montezuma, so it's a little bit of a smaller town.
Yes.
Why did you stay at GSW? Did you feel like the program was good, or did you like the size of Americus or the location?
I didn't want to leave my parents.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't want to leave my parents. And I didn't want to be too far from home. Sort of like Dorothy.
Yeah.
In The Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. There's no place like home.
Yeah.
And so I chose to go to a university closer. I commuted my first year going to GSW. And so it took me a while to kind of get into my reins of, all right, you got this.
Yeah.
Adult, if you can.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What did your family think? Your parents think about just even that transition from a physician to more of therapy and things like that? Did they see that? Were they on board with that?
I don't think they were against it per se. I think they were kind of like, this is a good avenue, and you are pursuing a further education, so we'll support it. As long as it is a marketable skill that sounds good, So it's sort of like it was new to them too. Like, what does this mean? Mm-hmm. What is counseling? What is she going to do after she, completes her master's? Mm-hmm. I think they were kind of waiting as a glimpse of hope of like, just to see what this mean. I don't think there's anyone else, that would take that path in terms of making it a treatment, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And do you think that that's mainly because it's just not well known in the area, or just...
Well, I think, honestly, and this is probably my main premise of what I've grown to learn, is in the African American community and minorities in general, we already have a predisposition to trauma, vicarious trauma through many means of oppression, and so I think that with that notion, there's a taboo. About, and there's a mistrust. Is this really going to be confidential? Is this really going to help? Why do I have to come to someone and tell them my narrative? And do they even deserve to know this? And so it's very fearful when we just look at it from the community standpoint of us. And so that kind of drives my passion a little bit more to recognize therapy in itself in a different way than just, back in the day. It wasn't really a treatment other than the psychiatrist. And, you've heard the horror stories, and they make horror movies out of the asylums and different things, right? So getting out of that and getting more into the talk base, that we actually do use modalities. We actually do use intentional verbiage and dialogue to help people overcome challenges.
Yeah.
Yes.
So with your family, or even just you personally, since it felt like you said, kind of a taboo kind of thing, how do people normally deal with trauma?
They don't deal with it. They don't deal with it. And if they do, it's by an unhealthy means that perpetuates the trauma more. Okay.
Explain that.
So substance use, whether it's just smoking cigarettes, you're suppressing anger. There's no way around it. Or it's unhealthy relationships. You are familiar with a person that has reminded you of a previous perpetrator or abuser. You're going right back vicariously into the trauma. Or triangulation. I'm going to get this friend or said parent or whoever to be my outlet, and their bias. Yeah. And I'm going to join them in, and that just perpetuates the trauma. So it's numerous ways that the trauma is not dealt with, or people, it's a cliche thing, time heals all wounds, but you're not working during the time. You're not exercising new perceptions and new ways of thinking.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I think about too, I mean, it's not just that an individual would reject counseling or therapy, but also that they don't even know that there is a way that you can pattern your life towards something that can actually attack it, right? And getting it out. I think a lot of times we think, well, we can handle it inside. We can deal with it here.
Right.
The problem is that the battle has to come out to be able to communicate in such a way that so you can see what it is, because it can mask itself in many different forms, right? So you're always you're always justifying yourself. You're always giving yourself probably a little bit more mercy than you should sometimes, or maybe you're beating yourself up too much, but you can't. It's hard to see that. So what happens when we're trying to deal with trauma like that in unhealthy ways? What do you see most often happens with people?
They'll wait until things get to the worst state ever. So with that being said, and that's not everyone, right? But in general, I usually, when I meet clients, when they are presenting to services and I'm asking them, and we do an initial psychological assessment, and one of our questions is, what really brought you here? Like, was there something that recently happened that really put you on the brink of, okay, I'm at my wit's end. This is my breaking point. I have to come and see someone. And usually that's the cases that I see when it's became to the worst ever, and then we're going back. Yeah. But they want to go forward. But I'm like, no, we got to go here and all the way around, right? In a systemic way to really treat what's happening.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about, starting this journey, going through, getting a degree, and then you decide, we'll come back to some of these things, but then you decide to actually invest and stay local as well. Now, what's the reason for that?
I think it's a calling, and I don't say that with like a grandiosity. I actually, when I first started Lotus in 2020, me and my best friend, she was going to, be my business partner, very supportive. And we were actually looking at office locations in Atlanta area. Because, that's like you got to go to the big city, to make it mentality, right? And we just kept trying, kept looking, and the places that we would go and view. And I just didn't feel I just didn't feel like this is not where I'm supposed to be, or at least start, you know? So I just started looking around locally. Again, that feeling of, hey, I want to stay close to my parents as well. So I called up the Patels at the Windsor at the time, and they gave me opportunity. I said, I want to open up a mental health private practice here. And once I walked in the office, I was like, this is it. I just knew, like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is it. I felt it in my heart. Wow. Now, did your partner agree with that? Did y'all stay together through that process? Or do they want to be through Atlanta and try to figure out some different things? We unfortunately, and her name is Alexandria, she'll probably watch, but we unfortunately parted ways. And so that's on the brink of learning that relationships are important. However, growing as a businesswoman, you know, started to set in. And I think we just decided, hey, this is not for both of us. Or maybe this is not the right timing for the both of us in this endeavor because it fits one but not both, you know. And though I think family and friends, they will support you, you know, in your business, but they have their own lives too and their own purposes. And so we made a modest, you know, agreement that that's what would happen. Absolutely. But she is still so supportive, so I'm grateful for that. I love it. Yes. They all right. So you're wanting to go after this. You're pursuing it. You put this business together. Obviously, you start building clients and just people, and you get to hear real stories. At any point in time, did you say, "What did I just get myself into?" Or have you always has that energized you? Actually, it energizes me. So when I first, when I was completing when you go get your master's in therapy, in the counseling field, you could do a program. Some programs are designed differently. Mine required 2 years. And then the first year is your theoretical training, right? And then the second year, you are able to basically have the hands-on work. So you do practicum is what we call it. And so during my practicum, I was like, I don't want to do couples therapy. Like, I want to go to like the highest level of mental health. So we do, separate the levels of mental health. So I just break it down to acute, minor, and major. So I wanted the major mental health disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar 1 and 2 disorder. And so in Valdosta, I interned at, doing my practicum, what's called Legacy Behavioral Health Today. And I was on their team of, you know, serve a community treatment, and I worked in the community. So this is actually starting than private practice. It's kind of like just a little shoot into being in person, sitting down in the office. I'm usually out in the community, in homes, you know, going to where people are, in hospitals, jails. So I challenged myself I want to be where the people are. You know, I want to be and see real life what crisis look like and what is driving, you know, people to this type of illness. So I went from higher level to moderate. So work with assertive community treatment for a year or 2 years. Then I double dipped in private practice. I wanted to just see it in all forms. I actually got hired at Valdosta State's Counseling Center, worked there for a while. And so that's kind of more, they are set up like private practice. And, you know, from that point, I went to the prison system. So I worked at Macon State Prison, right down the road in Oglethorpe, Georgia, as well. And then COVID happened. And I think during that time, it was very helpless for everyone. So you're already working with a vulnerable population of men there. I mean, they were a level 4 facility. So that means mostly lifers, is what we would say. And the I felt so oppressed. And then that moment I was like, this is too much to carry. Now it is vicariously, it's like a secondary trauma. And so that is what propelled me to, hey, I think my clients, they started reaching out through COVID, ones I had helped previously over the years. And they pushed me they basically made me see them. And it was perfect timing. It was divine timing for me. So I took what was a oppressive time for everyone. That was another time where the states, and the licensing boards, they allowed us to come in and do more virtual services. The insurance panels were more lenient because there was an influx, again, waiting until things kind of get worse, right?
Yeah.
And the pandemic brought out a lot of vicarious trauma that was already there. That was just a extra cherry on top. But I was able to start the business from there and grow it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and I know too, I mean, when you're talking about, we're using different words, therapy, counseling.
Yes.
Give me just a basic summary. You mentioned that a lot of people may hear it and just have the wrong view of what it is. Can you just give us some basic framework for that?
I think people, so let me define it, I guess, because I think people come to services wanting counseling. And that's why I call it Lotus Nest counseling, right? But you're actually getting therapy, but they have to be ready for that part. So counseling to me is advice. Take it or leave it. You don't have to do it. There's no subset of, internal treatment that's going on. You're telling me your problem. I'm giving you options and an answer. Go about your merry way, your own free will. Therapy is a very intimate, very, very confidential treatment. You are telling your narrative from all parts of your life, some secrets that even you saying it aloud in front of a stranger, and that person is able to take that and regurgitate it out in a way that brings about change. And if you bring about that change in one person, it's enough to bring about change for their whole family system. Yes.
Wow.
So that is how passionate and how powerful therapy can be. So some people want counseling, and we could say at that level, right? But therapy holds that person accountable for change, and it brings in those modalities to drive about change as well.
Okay. Now, you had to go through the state for some of these things, or are you do you have your personal practice? Is that licensed? How does all that work?
So once you obtain a master's in therapy, that 2 or 1 year program, you have the option to practice. However, to be fully licensed in the state of Georgia for at least, you have to practice counseling for, it's counted in hours. So I will average it of 3 years, and you have to be up under a supervisor. During that time, you can become what's called an associate. You can get an associate license, which brings you more. You sit for an exam for that. But once you complete all of your hours, you can submit to the board. Hey, I've seen all these people with these face-to-face hours, families, couples, individuals, groups. These are the settings I did it at, and these are the supervisors that I've been under. And so you maintain your licensure just like a nurse would or a physician, and we have to do 30 credit hours usually of continuing education to just stay abreast of what's in the field. But yeah, that's typically you're up under a license. So at Lotus, I have supervisees that are unlicensed. I have associate licensed therapists, and I have fully licensed therapists.
Okay.
So it varies.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, Obviously, you are more than just a therapist, more than just a counselor, so what do you like to do even just outside of that? I mean, we're going to get into some counseling and therapy stuff like that, but I just think about, you're here in Americus. What are some other things that you have really been able to enjoy, or have you just been so focused on kind of building and
just be honest.
Yeah.
I eat, sleep, and work therapy.
Okay.
My goal, projection, and I'm probably jumping it, but my goal is to be able to, as an entrepreneur, because I'm a therapist first and, entrepreneur. I really don't, when you embark on entrepreneurship, you make a lot of sacrifices. And if you want the business to thrive, you will make those sacrifices. So I'm just now getting into a transition of, hey, I have some people that, the business is thriving. I have admins now. And so making some more room to get out there and see what's happening. I can't remember the last time I even been to a movie theater, just to see a movie. Usually it's just wake up, grind, make sure everyone is taken care of, making sure the clients are being seen in the most efficient manner as we want Lotus Nest to be represented. And so it's my baby, and I'm very protective over it, but I know the time will come, and it is coming, where I will be able to explore and hopefully see some new developments in Americus.
That'd be great. Yeah. So how long has Lotus Nest been started? How long has
I started officially on paper, right? Yeah. July of 2020.
Okay.
I didn't open up here until 2021. So I just operated for a year virtually, and then came the push for I need a physical location where I could focus and, where clients can actually come see me in person. But again, that's during the period of COVID and, all those things. So the first year here, I kind of laid low. Yeah. I laid really low, and I just, tried to figure out the operational side of things, and kind of envisioning step by step how I wanted things set up.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're building a culture of counselors and therapists. You're building a business and a brand, and so walk me through a process when someone wants to come and work for you. What are you looking for in a therapist or a counselor?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm really looking for someone, when I'm introduced to a therapist, that wants to learn. It's so many things that as a therapist, you never stop learning. If I meet someone and they're like, well, I know this and I know, that won't work, because we are co-creating realities every day with clients. And so you have to co-create the vision that Lotus Nest stands for as well. And under accepting my leadership, so someone who's trainable, someone who is a lifelong learner, and someone that is just as passionate about clients and understands, generational and vicarious trauma like I do. Yeah.
So let's get into some of those things, because you're using, trauma and some people probably have a good framework for that, but there might be just more that, because there might be somebody that's listening right now that says, do I need it? Do I need counseling? Do I need therapy? What are some signs that would help someone to make that decision?
So trauma is sort of self-defined. There are more severe triggers to trauma. Of course, we have our, we just had Hurricane Helene, So we have our traumas that are more environmental. So poverty, things that you would encounter living in poverty, the anxiety of knowing that, hey, either my parents or my way of being or living life is every day is in survival mode. So there's severe trauma and acute trauma. Acute trauma could be a bad breakup, a bad divorce, a tragedy in the family, a tragic death. You know, those things can kind of subset trauma. And then, you know, is self-defined. So it could be some psychological factors that play a part in that, such as, well, my mother always invalidated me and now my self-esteem looks like this. Or my father always said this and this is the way we do things and now I want to separate from the family and do my own thing. So it's so self-defined and the severity of it just... It can compile. So, right, we have things that happen at various stages of our life cycle, childhood, adolescence. And so some things can be subtle. You know, as they say, like high blood pressure is a silent killer. Well, trauma can be very silent as well. A person can smile, show themselves every day, you know, and still be dealing internally with a lot of trauma, a lot of triggers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. I've been more and more convinced, just even on like the spiritual implications that we live in a broken world where things that should be are not the way that they are. And so there's always this internal battle that thinks, this is not the way it ought to be. There's something that's wrong, right? And so I think about, you know, if someone says, well, I don't understand why people would be anxious or, you know, worried, or it's almost in my mind like, no, like suffering makes so much sense to everyone because everyone has suffered in some way. Like you said, there's various degrees of that, and then we have to internalize how we deal with it. But I think about this is why we need, you know, friends and we need professionals in our lives that truly care for us, because we're not living in a perfect world. We're living in a broken world, and we're trying to figure out how do you reconcile those things. And sometimes some things are so external that you can't. You know, let's say it's a family issue and you can't change people, and so you got to figure out how to adapt. And so I don't know, I'm saying a lot right now that you could just pick apart, you know, and just start pulling. But
and I do want to make this point too, and not to, you know, again, it's a systemic thing, but, you know, being an African American woman, right? You know, a lot of people don't realize the DNA part as well. So it's nature versus nurture, right? Because that's the science part. Yeah. But there are environmental factors that we're born into, but there are things that sometimes we're born with as well. And so I always tell clients, imagine that you didn't know that you carry the emotional DNA of 14 generations before you. What would that mean? What would that mean to you? And so... have you seen the family pattern of how divorce is so prevalent, of how communication and dysfunction is so prevalent, and it's not changing, you know? And what do you carry? Why when you go into a social setting and you're being celebrated, but you're anxious? The environment is well, but internally you're not, right? And so thinking of it in that way as well, that you are your ancestor. And if they have suffered, or even let's say through your mom's womb or pregnancy, if she has suffered, we cannot discount the emotional DNA that lies in that as well. Yeah,
I mean, that just seems like it's something that's so difficult to reconcile, because it's,
you can't see it. You can't touch it. But you can feel it. Yeah. Well, and I was going to ask you this too. I mean, you're growing up, you have relationships, you have friendships, you're trying to, I shared a little bit before that I like the idea of being, we're story formed people. We're built around the stories that we are. And so we're trying to set our minds, we're critically thinking through a framework that's there, and we don't even notice that it's there.
You know, so we might be looking at the exact same thing and have two different stories based on that thing, because my story that's been formed has a different interpretation of whatever that thing is.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. And so we're trying to understand that, but so we're getting into friendships and building relationships, but even as friends, because I mean, sometimes you just need good friends that would help you kind of walk through some of these
social
things, right?
beings. Yes.
So talk a little bit about how just as friends we can be more aware and come alongside. But then again, going back to the little bit more professional, like at some point you probably need to look at your friend and go, I can help you, but I really think that you need to take this next step
of course.
So tell us a little bit about how important relationships are.
I think relationships are very important, you know, to have someone that during a stressful event and they've known how you overcome other, you know, they know your past, you know, but there's a fine line on how that could interfere by bias, right? So I'm embarking on something new. You've known me for this long, you know, are you going this way? Is this too new for you? Am I shedding a different light of myself? So that's when the bias usually creeps in. Or if you're helping, so of course, being a therapist, like I think it's a misconception that, you know, we are the most emotionally intelligent people, personally and, you know, professionally. So drawing a boundary is, you know, the therapist should go to therapy of their own. And the friends, you know, even though we're together socially, we're creating memories, we are being those social beings and supportive, let's exercise therapy as a lifestyle. So when you go get your checkup at the doctor every year, or whether it's, you know, for whatever reason, like, go talk to someone that's unbiased and see how they see you. They're going to probably see you differently than those who are close to you and know you in a familiarized way.
Yeah.
So exercising it and holding each other accountable, like how we do with weight loss and those sort of things, accountability partner, we need to be accountable for, you know, let's go to therapy. Yeah.
I agree with that. I have several friends. I have several pastor friends that we come together once a month and we talk about our struggles. We talk about we confess things to one another. But then there are also times where I even extend even further than that, you know, where people don't have to know me. And I can hear from just this person has no, they obviously have care for me, but they're not looking to affect anything around me necessarily. They're just trying to help me understand what's real and what's not, right?
Yes.
And they're not necessarily going to benefit from that. That's what I mean by that. They want to help. Where sometimes our relationships are, well, if I say this to this person, it could change what's going to happen, right? And so you kind of want to find those people that say, hey, you don't have to worry about me, but I want to talk into your life, right? And so being able to do that. So I think that's really important. So I'm also interested just on that. We talked a little bit about taboos and things. How do we help people, or even help ourselves, encourage ourselves to take that next step, right? So you hear a lot. You go through a lot. You talk about secondary trauma. Like, how do you process that as an individual? And then, you know, if someone is looking towards counseling but have that negative view, what would you say to encourage them and see it differently?
I would say, well, first off, I go to therapy. I have to.
Yeah.
Listening to others is like, oh, wow. Oh, wait. This is like triggering me in some ways, you know. My parents, they went through divorce, you know, close friend died tragically in 5th grade. Like, those are the instances where a neighbor committed suicide, you know. So those are things where, hey, I probably should have been in counseling a long time ago, you know. But even in my embrace of counseling and therapy, I would say go into it with an open mind. Embrace the vulnerability of it, because you're going to feel vulnerable. And then don't take the first person as the first person. So trusting a therapist with your life story is a privilege. You are the expert of your own life, essentially. And so when you go to therapy, make sure it's an interview of the therapist as well. Because a lot of people think I should go to this person. And I think that comes from the medical side of like, I should go to this doctor. I know he specializes in this, so they're going to do this. It doesn't work that way with therapy. You go there, you feel for the person, and you see that does the dialogue coincide? You know, do you feel comfortable, and do you feel like it's a safe space with that person? Or do you feel like the feedback that you're getting thus far is good? You know, okay, it may be good, but challenge yourself. I must spend a whole 30 days and just do about 3 consultations with the therapist. And let's see from that who would best be trusted for my narrative, with humility, of course. But right. I think that's what, and even clients that come to see me, I'm like, I think I'm pretty good at it, you know, but I want to make sure that you're getting the best help as possible to bring change in your life. And even if that's not with me, you know, try some other people, do some consultations, really write down some questions that would be relevant to their viewpoint. Because even though we've been trained in these modalities and things, we still have bias. We still have perceptions and viewpoints, you know. Would you like a therapist that's more faith-based? Would you like a therapist that's more into omonism, you know? Like, would you like a therapist that maybe is more peer-related? They actually do disclose their own traumas and what led them. Are they open? So really kind of creating your own criteria of what fits for your needs is very important. Yeah.
So real quick, tell me just kind of a basic process. I know, again, everyone's different. Their story's a little bit different. But you're looking for concrete anchors, right? Helping people to kind of process very difficult things. Is there just kind of a formula maybe for you, or something, a framework for you and Lotus Nest that kind of that you hope to take people through a certain amount of maybe counseling sessions or things like that just says, hey, we're going to try to go from here to here. So what's the goal, I guess?
That's a good question. And I think that should be one of the criteria questions as well, because a lot of people do ask, well, do you think I'll be fixed in 6 sessions? And it's very therapist dependent. So for me, there is no structured way. I have people that come weekly, bi-weekly, once a month, quarterly, once a year check-in, you know what I mean? But usually you can expect once a week sessions. Usually our treatment is tailored towards a year, because that's when we do treatment plans and all that on the clinical side of things. But you know, we want to see consistency for at minimum 6 months. That is enough to address issues. You know, some people 3 months. It depends on that severity scale as well. But, you know, typically brief therapy is considered 6 sessions, 6 to 12 sessions, you know. But some people, again, like, I want it to be a lifestyle, you know, and if we have to take breaks in between, or, you know, I step people down like a graduation. We've graduated to 2 weeks. I think you're at that point. You just know, and you're in rhythm with each other.
So when do you feel like someone comes in? Is there a certain is there a certain hope that you have for them that says, okay, now when they face this trauma again, or they suffer in this way again, we want them to get to X, Y, and Z instead of going to A, B, and C? Is that kind of what you're hoping, is to kind of help them frame that next event in a healthier way?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So usually when I can see change happen, the language changes, the way they tell their story changes, and you could see it in action. So if they said, hey, I'm not going to go around these type of people anymore, you would see them in the community in a different group, or maybe they've decided to relocate. Like, you actually see them put that, it's not just a theory and they've overcame some fear. They put it in action, and they're not reporting the anxiety, the stress level. We're gauging it and we're assessing it, right, clinically. But usually you can see the change. It becomes tangible.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So do you keep up with analytics, like how many people come in, what is the success rate, those types of things? How is that? Just for counseling, because I think it does encourage people to say, hey, people come in, they're in a really bad place, and they're in a better place when they leave. So
yes. The motto of Lotusness is finding where your presence begins, so you can be present with yourself for the first time. And so, yes, we do gauge, the success rate. We do client surveys, and I'm very analytical. So I like to look at the ratings and what people say internally about their experience. So we also keep a tracker of how many clients we're seeing per therapist, what's the therapist turnover, and those sort of things, and retention, which, is perspective on the business end as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, like I said, I mean, it's, as a pastor, I get a chance to meet people. And a lot of times, when someone comes to shake my hand, maybe when I first see them, they want to introduce themselves. But a lot of times when I get a handshake, it's, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And so it is. It's someone who's going through something very difficult, and they're looking for, again, just those anchors of, okay, where is the consistency? Where can I find a little bit of stability in something that feels so uncertain, and whether that's a choice that they have to make or something that they're dealing with. And a lot of times they're the same. It's a choice that they have to make based on something that they've already kind of gone through. And so I have the joy to be able to, like you said, my hope is to kind of know where they're at. Right. Because we got to get to a place where they can have an honest conversation even with themselves. And so, all right, well, where are you? And that might, like you said, that doesn't take, it takes way more than 30 minutes. It's going to take a long time for someone to process that. Unless they've been to counseling before, and then they're really good. And then they're like, I can tell you strengths, weaknesses.
Do this more. Like, oh my gosh, yes. Which is good. It's emotional intelligence.
And so we want to definitely get to a place where people can have those honest conversations, feel safe enough to be able to see, okay, how do all these things become reconciled? And as a pastor, well, I look at Christ and I say, well, I believe that he is rose from the dead. And if he's risen from the dead, that means he's taken every sin that you've committed and sin that's been committed against you. And if that was strong enough, he wouldn't have got up. So because he's up, that means that there's hope. It may take a while for us to understand that and walk through that and believe that and trust in that. But his resurrection tells me a lot about what's going to happen. And so I'm very thankful for that. And so just trying to help people walk through that. But again, it's that story, right? It's a true story, and we're trying to listen to stories and we're trying to formulate that. And so I love the fact that people, one of the things that we haven't really talked about, but that's really important in counseling, is just the fact that you don't just talk. You listen. Part of your job, most of your job, probably 85% of it is listening, because you have a plan that kind of works, but really it's 85% listening, so that you can be like, all right, that's the thing, right? Would you agree with that?
I totally agree. Okay. And I think most of my clients would describe me as very direct. I'm not going there again. We're going here. I listen. We're going to process that. We're going to bring about that change, but my rhythm is, hey, realize that this is happening. Yes. We've outlined the pattern. This has been in your narrative. Are we really co-constructing something else? And I like how you explain it, because you're actually describing a modality that we do. It's called narrative therapy.
That's awesome.
It is awesome. And that is the premise. You listen to someone's story and you co-construct a new story, a new reality based off what's called taken for granted realities. And so we do things like externalize the problem. So you are not the problem is here, and then see what we could do to change how we relate to it. You know, little boy comes in, I see a monster, and what would we call the monster? You know, or he's sad. What would we call the sadness? Because it's not you, it's sadness, right? So,
have you noticed which ones are just more helpful for others, or does it really just depend on the person? What kind of therapy?
Such a good question.
You know,
I challenge myself to be, I think it's another word to call it, but I guess practice some omanism in the modalities.
Okay.
So in my session, I may do 5 modalities in one.
Okay. And what is a modality?
A modality is
just the mode in which you're communicating the counseling framework?
It's an intervention.
Okay.
We are intervening into what the problem or pattern is.
Okay.
Yes, it's an intervention. So it's sort of like how the doctors like prescribe medication, they intervene, right, with that medication. Or they do surgery, they intervene and they go in and fix the bone structure, right? That is our way, talk-wise, of intervening in the problem.
Okay.
When you say this person interprets that. When you say this, it could be perceived this way, but this is really how you perceive it. Intervention.
Yeah. Okay. And then from that particular conversation and session, you get a better sense of where you want to go? Absolutely.
Some people, it is very contextual based. I think some people come in and they need a little, you know, what we call solution focus. So that is short-term, long-term goals, nothing in between. How do we get there? Because you haven't had any direction your whole life. You know? So solution focus, cognitive behavioral, the way you think, the way you feel, the way that this belief is in place. I am not enough. It shows in these things. So let's reframe it. Let's develop a new belief.
Absolutely. Well, and I will say too, we're going to kind of shift towards kind of the future of Americus, but I even think about with mental health, counseling, therapy, there's a future that we want to see people dealing with an issue that starts small today, that in 5 years from now is going to be way bigger than it should be if we did X, Y, and Z. I think there's always going to be a place for counseling, for therapy, because again, I believe that we're in a broken world where people are having to deal with suffering. But there are certain things, you know, that you see a pattern that says, man, if we could get to there, they're going to be better off in the future, and they may not need this counseling for this particular issue. So what are some things for someone, maybe even right now in the next 5 years, that may be something that they have to deal with, that if they just kind of did some small things right now, they may not end up into that serious of a situation? Hopefully that makes sense. Just kind of that.
Absolutely. Well, maybe this is a greater span of, I'm just going to go there in mind. I think that the psychology aspect should be in our grooming and rearing from childhood. So more of psychology in the schools, more of, hey, we need some mental time. And I get it, different age groups, maybe we never needed that, and why do they need that? And they taking prayer out of schools out, right? We need that time. I'll just take them out.
Yes.
We need that time to really, you know, have a mindful moment. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And do I feel connected with myself? If people would just take 15-minute breaks, you know, during the day of, I'm just going to disconnect. I'm going to really see how I'm feeling right now. It won't compile to, I don't even know who I am anymore, or my sense of identity.
Yeah.
I think it's very important.
Yeah. I read a book recently in the last few years called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Yes. And this particular person was saying not that we shouldn't be busy, but that we shouldn't be too busy. And that our busyness, our hurriedness is actually, the way that he defines it, he's a pastor, but he defines it as like your soul has left your body because your body's going so fast, your soul can't keep up. And so it's like if we just slowed down, you'd like meet back up. You would meet back up.
Yes.
And so he talks about several practices and talks about how, Christ says, "Come unto me, all you are weary, heavy laden, and I will give you rest for your souls," right? So he's kind of walking through Jesus' teaching. But one of the things that I try to practice too is just sitting there, and it's called practicing the presence of the Lord, just practicing his presence, just being there. And not doing anything, not performing, not doing anything, just breathing, just hearing myself breathe, and then just saying, "Lord, I don't have anything to offer you. I don't even have a prayer right now. I just want to be present with you." It reminds me of when my child comes up, and she's supposed to be doing her morning routine, but she just comes out in her shirt, and she's just all groggy, and she just comes and she just lays in my lap, and I know we got things we have to do today. I know, but right now that doesn't matter. She just wants to be present with me, and I don't need her to do anything for her to be my daughter, so when I hear what you're saying, I'm like, this is something that's so necessary for our lives. Absolutely. Because we're not just created just to think. We're created to be. Yes. We're created to
find
have
where
these
your
emotions.
Presence begins, right?
So
find where your presence begins.
And I think it's honestly, I haven't done a bunch of research, but it seems to me that more Eastern cultures understand this than Western cultures. Western cultures have kind of separated them and said, "Hey, you don't have to be, you just have to think and do." And where Eastern culture says, "No, I think it needs to be holistic. I think we should be thinking and being and doing at the same time." And so this is why it's so important, is because we were created not just to perform, not just to do, but to actually be. And I think some people miss that, and so that's why they don't want to go to counseling, maybe in their minds, or therapy, because they feel like, well, no, that's separate. That's a separate thing.
That's a separate thing.
That's what some people need. No, it's what everybody needs, right? So I'm very thankful for that. So as we move towards kind of the future, not just Americus, but even small towns, I think obviously Americus is growing. It has the potential to continue to grow and be healthy. So we've already talked a little bit about what people can be doing right now that helps the future of Americus, because we need healthy people, right, in Americus that know how to understand their emotions and work that well, and still, again, go get checkups, go be a part of the society, and then help us build this community out more and more. And so I think we need more of this, not less, is what I'm trying to suggest.
Absolutely. What I would love to see, and I think this is more of the community-based part, and maybe Lotus can offer it one day, but I would like to see more oneness in a way where we do connect back to the environment. So I think that's like the biology part of me again. Yeah. So, I would love to see like mental health camps, more of substantial farming incorporated with emotional health, equestrian therapy, as it relates to animals. They could teach us a lot of emotional intelligence too. So just seeing it in a very holistic way where it's also community-based and focused, but in the setting of, and of course, that's, I think, one of the reasons of choosing a small town. There's a lot of rural area. And so it's the perfect place to connect with that and slow down and normalize more of the nature part as well. We have the nurture part. We have places where you could go. We have people you could see, right? But creating that environment that connects with everything, Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, and again, I don't know what all parts of society has kind of just come together in such a way that it feels like it really has separated a lot of things. Like we talked about, even about the arts, like I remember going to school and having more arts programs, being able to kind of think more creatively. And we've kind of condensed that a little bit, and so there's just different aspects of our being, whether it's our creativity. Yes. I love nature, like you said, just being able to walk around. I mean, I got on a treadmill today. It was great.
Okay.
I think that's great. Exercise obviously is great. Yeah. But there are times where I'll just go out and I'll just walk in a woods or in a park somewhere, and there's just something that's different about that. And I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still walking, but there's something about that's actually my brain's able to like expand further, see things, and I get to look at, like you said, animals, insects, and go, wow. And then again, here is the pastor in me. It's, you see, Proverbs, you see, it's like, look at these animals, see what they're doing and see how we can learn from them, so we need to get back to more of those things. So I would love to see some of those things, obviously, in the future too. And we can do that again, taking our kids, taking our families, taking people out and just going and seeing different things and experiencing different things together. I think would be really great.
Absolutely.
So, well, listen, we've got a couple more minutes. I just wanted to get a chance to hear a little bit more about kind of who you are. This is what we call our rapid fire questions. These are just fun for us to get to know you a little bit. Well, first and foremost, this won't be aired for a couple weeks, but it is your birthday today. And so I want to say happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
That's super cool. So thank you for coming on our podcast.
Yes.
Really cool present for us. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yes.
All right. Let's do, are you a coffee or a tea person?
Coffee.
Okay. Now, do you take anything in your coffee? Cream, sugar, or are you?
Everything. It's my weakness.
Okay.
Yeah, I love a little caramel macchiato. I love some espresso. It really, my staff probably doesn't like it because it umps me up. Like, let's get going,
Right.
But I really, not just for the energy, for the taste.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Are you a morning person or night person?
Night person.
Night person. Okay. All right. Do you have a favorite book or an author?
Not anyone that I could think of off the top. No.
Any genre? Do you just like reading books about counseling and therapy and just learning leadership things, or are you just like to just read novels and just kind of get out there, get lost somewhere?
Well, growing up, I was fascinated in like the Lord of the Rings.
Okay. Yeah. That's
I have all of the movies and the novels, and I just, it's just something I've like put, it's like in storage and like, okay.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
But yeah.
I love it. My son, he's trying to read through the second book. I think it's The Two Towers.
Yes.
Or he's still on the first book, but it's just so hard. The language is hard because it's a completely different culture and time. And so he's just like, I'm trying to pull this stuff together. It's really hard. But I keep telling him, like, you can't watch the movie until you read the book.
I love
and so he's
medieval.
Like, I can't. He's like, I want to watch these movies.
Anything history like medieval, Renaissance even. Like,
that's fun.
I love it.
All right. Do you have like a go-to comfort food that you like, or a restaurant that you enjoy here?
Well, I do enjoy corn. I just gotta say it. I love anything cornbread, popcorn, corn on cob, cream corn casserole.
Nice.
Like, I'm a corn fanatic.
That's
in
awesome.
terms of, restaurants, I do get a Little Brothers Bistro here, which is very convenient for us to walk right to.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's a good little spot.
They have
That's right.
Some great sandwiches. Go there.
Okay. All right. If you could have dinner with any 3 people, living or dead, who would that be?
Oh, wow. Living or dead. Oh, I'm so indecisive. It's like so many people. It's going through like a slideshow.
Yeah.
Living, I would definitely like to meet probably Iyanla Van Zandt or Oprah Winfrey because they're very big on like mental health, therapy, healing, and I've watched them, from a little girl growing up. And I actually really, really like King David.
Okay.
Of the Bible.
Okay. Yeah. Like to meet him? Yeah.
Yeah. Because the book of Proverbs and even the story of David and Goliath, it's sort of like a momentous thing that we have giants every day, and how God just blessed him so much, as what we would call present day, the black sheep of his family. I've just always drawn to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
he'd be pretty awesome to meet. I would love, I read his Psalms, and what he's saying. And then I'm like, all right. And then he gets on his armor and he goes and he has to go fight. Yes. I mean, that's, it's like you said, you have to put action to these words. So he's like, Lord, you will protect me. And then he goes out and fights, 1,000 men. I'm like, he really believes it, really so it's really important that we believe. But that's awesome. All right. Do you have a favorite way to unwind or relax?
I love music.
Nice.
Any genre.
Okay. Now, do you ever just kind of get away and just play a little bit?
I haven't. That is actually my goal.
Okay.
My short-term goal.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have like a piano or a keyboard?
My keyboard is non-functioning right now. So that's the first goal. Get a new keyboard.
Get a new keyboard. I like it. All right. Do you have a favorite season?
Fall.
Nice.
Do you remember September? It's my birthday time, fun festivals. I love the weather. I don't like hot weather. I love 75 degrees. Oh,
yeah. I
nice
love it.
Breeze.
Clear.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a favorite vacation destination you like to visit at some point?
Anywhere where there's mountains. I mean, I have a bucket list like Singapore, Thailand, Philippines. I want to go a little bit everywhere. I would like to visit the Palace of Versailles one day because I tell you, I like the history, that sort of thing. But anywhere where there's just clear land, nature, would do me well.
I love it. What's your favorite piece of advice that you have ever received?
Don't let anyone take away your smile. The random guy, gas station, never saw him a day in my life. It was here in Americus actually some years ago. And it's like when I saw him and he said that, it triggered something. So, yeah.
I love that. Well, that's a really great place to end, too, because, I mean, it's really a part about helping people kind of build out this understanding of themselves and the world around them in such a way that they can truly, again, go through life with hope and with joy. I tell people all the time that one of the things that I want to be able to do better in the next 6 months to a year is run on joy. I would really love to run on joy.
That sounds good.
And so it's exciting. And so, yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to get a chance to meet you for the first time. Now, again, you're right over here, so I can come by and check up on you after I go to Little Brothers Bistro.
Yes.
And so thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And
Thank you
we look
for
forward to the
having
future of what Americus is going to be like and how we can encourage others to continue to take their steps forward.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. Awesome. Yes. All right.
All right. We're good.
All right. Thank you.
Good. I think we're just a little